The night the fire took everything, Daniel was 16 years old and still believed the world was fair. The house had always smelled of baked bread and detergent. His mother woke before sunrise every morning, humming old songs while she prepared breakfast. His father worked at the local mechanic shop and came home with grease on his hands and tiredness in his eyes, but he always smiled when he saw his son. That night, the wind was violent. It howled against the windows like something alive. Daniel had fallen asleep with his headphones on, listening to music that made him dream of bigger cities and brighter futures. He never heard the first crack of burning wood. He woke to smoke. Not the soft smoke of a candle or the gentle scent of something overcooked. This smoke was thick, black, suffocating. It crawled into his lungs and clawed at his throat. He stumbled from his bed, disoriented, coughing. "Mom!" he shouted. The hallway was glowing orange. He doesn't remember how he got outside. He remembers the heat biting his skin, the sound of glass shattering, his father's voice shouting something he could not understand. He remembers turning around once, just once, and seeing the roof collapse like a dying animal. His parents never made it out. The next morning, the sky was cruelly blue. At the funeral, Daniel stood between two empty spaces where his parents should have been standing beside him. People whispered words like tragic, unfair, and God's will. None of it meant anything. His ears rang as if he were underwater. He felt hollow. The insurance barely covered anything. The house was gone. The savings were small. An uncle from another town agreed to let Daniel stay temporarily. That temporary stay turned into years. His uncle was not cruel, but he was not kind either. "You're old enough now," his uncle would say. "Life doesn't stop because you're sad." Daniel worked after school at a grocery store, stacking shelves and cleaning floors. At night, he lay awake replaying the fire in his mind. Sometimes he would wake up gasping, convinced he smelled smoke again. Grief is not loud. It is quiet and constant. It whispers that you should have done more. It tells you that you should have saved them. It convinces you that you survived by mistake. For months, Daniel blamed himself. If he had woken up sooner, if he had checked the wiring like his father once mentioned, if he had been stronger. Guilt wrapped around him like chains. School became unbearable. He sat in the back of the classroom, staring out the window while the world moved on without him. Friends stopped inviting him places. They didn't know what to say. Eventually, they stopped trying. He failed 2 subjects. One afternoon, his teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, asked him to stay after class. "You're not stupid," she said gently. "You're hurting." Daniel stared at the floor. "I don't want your pity," he muttered. "This isn't pity, it's belief." He almost laughed. Belief? In what? But she did something unexpected. She handed him a worn notebook. "Write," she said. "You don't have to show anyone, just write." He didn't start that night or the next. The notebook sat on his desk like an accusation. One evening, after another nightmare, Daniel grabbed it. He wrote about the fire. He wrote about the smell of smoke. He wrote about the silence at breakfast that would never be filled again. The words came out broken at first, jagged and messy, but they came. And when he finished the first page, he felt something small and unfamiliar. Relief. Writing became his secret oxygen. Every night he poured pain onto paper. Slowly, the weight in his chest shifted. Not gone, just lighter. Years passed. Daniel graduated high school with average grades, nothing spectacular. His uncle insisted he find real work. College was expensive, impossible really. So Daniel took a job at a warehouse. The days were long and mechanical. Lift, carry, stack, repeat. But at night, he wrote.
He wrote stories about boys who survived storms, about mothers who sang in burning houses, about fathers who never stopped believing in their sons. He sent one story to a small online magazine. They rejected it. He sent another, rejected. Another, rejected. Each email felt like another door slamming shut. "Maybe it's time to grow up," his uncle said one evening. "Dreams don't pay bills." Daniel nodded silently, but that night he wrote again. Because writing wasn't about money, it was about survival. At 23, something changed. He submitted a story called Ashes to a larger publication. He didn't expect anything. He had learned not to. 2 weeks later, he received an email. They wanted to publish it. He read the email 5 times to make sure it was real. When the story went live, he didn't tell anyone. He was afraid it was a mistake. But then something happened. Comments. Dozens of them. People wrote, "I lost my father last year. This helped me breathe. I thought I was alone. Thank you." Daniel stared at the screen with tears blurring his vision. For the first time since the fire, his pain had done something other than hurt. It had helped someone. He kept writing. More stories, more submissions, more rejections, more small victories. He saved every extra dollar. He applied for scholarships. He took night classes. It took him 6 years to finish a degree in literature. 6 years of exhaustion, of doubt, of working double shifts, of almost quitting. But he didn't, because he remembered the comments. "I thought I was alone." That sentence became his fuel. At 23, Daniel published his first book. It wasn't a bestseller overnight. It didn't explode into fame, but it reached people. He traveled to small libraries and community centers to speak. At one event, a young boy approached him after a talk. "My mom died last year," the boy said quietly. "When you said the pain doesn't disappear, but it changes shape, I think that's true." Daniel knelt down to meet the boy's eyes. "It does change," he said softly, "and so will you." That night, back in his hotel room, Daniel looked at his reflection. He no longer saw a broken 16-year-old standing in ashes. He saw a man forged by fire. The tragedy had not disappeared. It never would. There were still nights when memories burned too brightly. There were still anniversaries that felt like open wounds. But something had shifted. He no longer asked, "Why did I survive?" He asked, "What can I do because I survived?" And that question changed everything. Daniel started a foundation in his parents' name to support teenagers who had lost family members. It wasn't large, not at first, but it grew. He visited schools and spoke openly about grief, about guilt, about resilience. He told them something he wished someone had told him. "Your pain is not proof that you are weak. It is proof that you loved deeply." Years later, Daniel stood on a stage at a national conference on mental health. Hundreds of people filled the auditorium. He began his speech not with statistics or achievements, but with a story. "The night the fire took everything," he said, "I thought my life was over." The room was silent. "I believed I survived by accident, that I should have done more, that I wasn't enough." He paused. "But I was wrong." He looked out at the sea of faces. Survival is not an accident. It is an opportunity. The applause that followed was loud, but Daniel barely heard it. In his mind, he saw his mother humming in the kitchen. He saw his father wiping grease from his hands. He realized something powerful. The fire had taken their bodies, but it had not taken their love. That love had lived on in him, in every page he wrote, in every person he helped, in every hand he held while they cried. Life had been brutal, unfair, merciless, but it had also been transformative. Daniel understood now that tragedy does not get the final word. choice does. You cannot choose what burns, but you can choose what rises from the ashes. And sometimes the strongest people are not the ones who never fall. They are the ones who stand up, carrying scars like medals, and say, "I am still here." If you are reading this and you feel surrounded by smoke, if you believe your story ended the day everything fell apart, remember this: ashes are not the end. They are the beginning of something that learned how to survive fire. And if you are still breathing, your story is not over. It is waiting for you to decide what comes next.